Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, presented by the Chargers Podcast Network. My name is Steven, and I am the host, as always. And joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing this afternoon?
What was first just a dream for this Chargers offense has now become a frightening reality for those who may oppose Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. Steven, I'm doing fantastic. The Chargers won. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Much better to podcast after a win than a loss. So really excited to dive into today's show and yesterday's game. We're recording this on Monday, so this will be Wednesday for you guys. But we'll dive into the game. We like doing the Five Truths segment, so we're going to stick with that. We'll, of course, have our game ball segment and a look ahead to the Raiders game. It's officially Raiders week as well, so another big week in the NFL for the Chargers. We'll have all of that. Plus the unfortunate news that Mike Williams will be out for the season. That's how we'll start the show off, unfortunately, today. So before we get started, Tyler and I are fans of the team, just like you guys are. We've been given this platform by the team, and we're very excited and grateful for it. The opinions that we express on this show and every show are not always reflective of the organization itself. At the end of the day, these opinions are ours and ours alone, and should be a lot of fun today. Outside of the injury talk, unfortunately. All right, Tyler, we do have to start there. Mike Williams officially diagnosed with a torn ACL. Feel awful for him. You know, one of my favorite supporting Chargers of my lifetime. I've got his jersey hanging on behind me. I'm wearing a Mike Williams shirt today in his honor. So just terrible, terrible news that he will be lost for the season. After having himself a great day, him and Keenan Allen both going over 100 yards. Your initial reaction specifically to Mike Williams and his injury as we kind of braced for the worst, and ultimately that is unfortunately what happened today.
Yeah, it's devastating, and this offense does not have, outside of Mike Williams, a guy who can do those Mike Williams things, and most teams don't. There's something that Mike Williams provides, the X factor that he provides as a receiver, as literally an X factor as the X receiver, that is just different and special and something we always look forward to every year heading to Kansas City. Now we don't get that. And it's unfortunate that the Chargers finally started to show what this passing offense could look like, even though, not tons of deep shots or whatever, but they got things going. And Justin Herbert has a career day. And you lose Mike Williams, a guy who was a big part of that. I mean, 121 yards on his own and a receiving touchdown. Things were finally clicking. The Chargers offense had momentum. And now he's out for the year. And the unfortunate part of it is, and there's no concrete 100% this is going to happen or not happen, but you can't help but feel like this might be the end. This might have been the last time that we saw Mike Williams with the Chargers. Of course, he's on the team next year in terms of contract. But there's so many decisions that they have to make, and right now the odds are stacked against him to return next season. So I hope for a speedy recovery, but it's devastating. This team is not going to be better with him gone. This offense is going to suffer because he's not out there, and it's unfortunate that it happened so early in the season and at all.
Yeah, early season injuries are the worst because you never really see what the potential really can be. Like Mike Williams had a 100-yard day yesterday. He had a really good game against the Titans. And there were just like some little misses between him and Justin Herbert, like in terms of deep ball opportunities. I want to say he was like top 5 in the league in air yards, like just potential air yards that he could have gained. So we really could have seen, a career season for Mike Williams this year. Kellen Moore using him in the slot more often, getting him the ball in more creative ways, taking advantage of his size over the middle, taking advantage of his ability after the catch. You can nitpick some of the usage for sure. I would not have done the jet sweep thing as much as Kellen did with Mike Williams, but the way that they were using him was just a more creative approach that would have, I think, led to a career season for Mike Williams. And like you mentioned, just the X factor ability that he brings to the table. We saw that yesterday against the Vikings, that catch down the right sideline, right, where how many guys really that are 6'5" can really bend down and catch that pass? Like, not that many, right? But there's just that X factor ability, that big play potential that we've seen time and time again, whether it's against the Chiefs or, against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, or whether it's against the Raiders, whether it's against the Broncos on Herbert's record-breaking catch in 2021. There's just that X factor and that trust ability between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams and Justin Herbert. Herbert has that just always in that at the forefront of his mind, like, hey, like things might not be ideal, but I can just go trust Mike to go make this play and give him that opportunity. And more often than not, Mike Williams is going to come down with those passes. So it's an unfortunate circumstance that so early on in the season, with so much potential for him individually and for this pairing between him and Justin Herbert, that he comes down with a torn ACL. So he is out for the season. It's just awful. These injuries are so avoidable. Freak incidents. There's going to be a lot of narratives out there, and there already are about him being injury prone. But this is a freak accident that nobody can control. There's no way around this kind of injury. Unfortunately, just kind of happens. So. They're going to miss Mike Williams a lot. They're going to miss that trust factor, that jump ball ability. How do they move past this? I think obviously that starts with Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, there are a few moments throughout the NFL and throughout the recent Chargers history where players are thrust into the spotlight when maybe they weren't ready or they weren't asked to be. Keenan Allen actually is one of those players. Justin Herbert's one of those players. Jamari Sawyer last year, and now it's Quentin Johnston. Whatever the ramp-up period was, whatever the plan was for him, well, hey, it's the NFL. Not everything goes according to plan, and this was not the plan. But Quentin Johnston, you drafted him to either be a part of your offense this year or to be a replacement to one of these guys in the coming years or whatever, but it has to be now. It starts in week 4 for Quentin Johnston, so whatever his usage was, it's going to ramp up significantly. Training wheels are off, and hopefully he's ready.
Yeah, he hasn't been playing a ton. He logged 16 snaps yesterday against the Vikings. Obviously, some of that is due to the Mike Williams injury. But what we've seen on tape and what Next Gen Stats has been tracking is that Quentin Johnston has been getting open. He was credited by Next Gen Stats, as having created over 6 yards of separation per route run, according to their system and their tracking. So he's getting open, and that's showing up on tape. That's showing up in the numbers. There were a couple opportunities each of the last 2 weeks for him to potentially create a big play, and I think we saw that throughout training camp, where he's the primary read, and then Justin is able to throw that route. Sometimes that's gone in situations where he's the number 3 read and he's open, and the number 1 read is Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, and they're also open. So now this is going to pivot responsibilities, and Quentin Johnston's going to be the number 1 read on several routes. He is the primary X receiver on this team now going forward. Joshua Palmer can play some of that, Keenan Allen can play some of that, but that's Quentin's job. Like, he is the primary X receiver. And I expect him to do well because he's been getting open with his opportunities. And it's just a matter of Justin Herbert being able to develop that trust with him. And I think, obviously, that's not going to happen right away. But, they're going to have the rest of the whole season to develop that kind of trust. And I do expect Quentin to play well. And there's already some chatter about, trying to evaluate these players, right? It's been 3 games, and Quentin Johnston has, 40 snaps. Let's pump the brakes. Quentin will be fine, and I think he'll do well in this role.
What do you think the expansion of his role will be, and maybe specifically what will he do differently and be asked to do differently than someone like Josh Palmer? Because they asked Josh Palmer last year to just be whoever was out, and so I could see him doing maybe more of the boundary work or something. Do you think Quentin Johnston is more that middle of the field, dig, shallow crosser, deep over sort of stuff, or what do you envision for him?
So for Palmer, first and foremost, I think one of the routes that he runs really well is the slant. And that's such a crucial part of what Mike Williams does for this team. So I could see Joshua Palmer taking over that kind of role where it's the short intermediate X stuff, especially out of 12 personnel or when they go heavy personnel and, Joshua Palmer has to win on a slant. I think that's probably something you trust Palmer to do more than Quentin Johnston at this current moment. But like you mentioned, when it comes to deep routes, Quentin Johnston is that guy. He's going to be the one running post. He's going to be running corners. He's the one going to be running digs and all these kind of routes to get him the ball deep. And so I think anyone expecting him to be like 100% of the snaps, like Mike Williams has been, is going to be a little bit disappointed. But he's like, they don't have a choice. Like, he's going to be getting 45, 50 snaps a game now, just because they don't have any other guy like him on the roster. So it's not going to be the full Mike Williams complement of targets. It's not going to be the full Mike Williams complement of role. But I would guess that he takes on the lion's share of that role, probably 70% or more, if I would have to guess right now.
Yeah, there's no good timing for injuries, I guess, but having the Raiders up next and then having a bye to evaluate, okay, what was the role? What could the role be? What could we change? It's, I guess, kind of good timing in that regard. I'm excited, though. Like, we have wanted to see more from Quentin Johnston. We've been asking for it, and now we're going to get it, for better or worse. He'll be out there more, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you draft Quentin Johnston in the first round, to have this kind of depth, to have this kind of versatility. This obviously potentially could mean an expanded role for Darius Davis. We'll see about that one. Jalen Guyton, still kind of waiting to hear about his potential return. But the Chargers are in a good spot from the wide receiver perspective. This is what we talked about all summer long. The wide receiver room is as deep as it's been in quite some time. This isn't last year where the drop off from 1 to 2 is so drastic. This year they have options, starting with Quentin Johnston. I think he's going to reward them. I think he's going to play well, and I think he's going to provide some big splash plays himself, in a similar fashion that Mike Williams has done.
Yeah, I love the investment in the premium positions, and we talked about why it's important. We've seen so far. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about him today. Tuli as an edge rusher, why it was so important to go out and get someone that early at a premium spot. That's paid off, and now, unfortunately but fortunately, they invested a high pick in a receiver, and that's going to pay off. So again, strong, smart investments in premium positions.
Yeah, and I think that's going to pay dividends for them. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to our 5 Truths segment. I'm going to start this one off. We did talk about Justin Herbert's performance on Sunday on our show, on our recap show. I was a little hesitant to dub this his best performance because I wanted to wait and see what the film said, but my first truth is that was indeed Justin Herbert's best performance of his career. That film that I just watched today was ridiculously good, and the fact that it came against a team that was sending pressure, sending blitzes on 80% of Justin Herbert's dropbacks is insane. There's the instance of the free rusher where he's on his back foot and he just flicks that wrist and it's Joshua Palmer for 45 yards. Just the easiest throw ever, and it's like, okay, that's not supposed to be that easy. There's the rollout left and the bullet across the line to Keenan Allen. There was the corner route to Keenan Allen on the, when the Vikings were in that Tampa 2 look. The way that he handled pressure, the way that he handled the blitz packages, I have never seen him that dialed in on tape where he's calling out every single thing at every single moment. Like, we had talked about, leading up to the Vikings game that, there has been some kind of mixed results in terms of him, calling things out the line, doing checks and handling the protection packages and handling everything that Kellen Moore is asking of him. But it was so dialed in on this week against the Minnesota Vikings where, again, 80% of their dropbacks were blitzed. It's the craziest thing. Like, they were sending 8. Like, they had 8 people across the line on every single snap, it felt like, watching that tape. And just, like, calm and collected, didn't flinch. There might be some other performances where, like, there were more splash plays. But just, like, from a down-in and down-out basis, I thought this was Justin Herbert's best performance of his career. And they simply do not win this game if he's not that level of dialed in, just, like, needed every single play that they had from him. And I thought that this was an outstanding performance against a team who was super creative in trying to fluster him, and it just did not faze him one bit yesterday afternoon.
Justin Herbert was so good that I almost had to subscribe to Twitter Blue so I could post enough of the videos of him in one tweet, because there was just clip after clip after clip after clip of him dialing it up against the blitz. And it was beyond just, oh, let's just throw it to Keenan Allen, which, again, that was a lot of it. But in some games like the Cardinals, where maybe it was just, get it to the guy and maybe delay and pray, and that's kind of it, you really felt there was a sense of control at the line that we have not seen. And I believe this was the most he's been blitzed since the last time that they played like the Vikings. Like that was the next most times he was ever blitzed. And that was a very different kind of performance. It certainly wasn't over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. What he was able to do at the line of scrimmage was phenomenal. And credit to Kellen Moore and the game plan going into this, because it wasn't just, Herbert had to figure it out, and they were bringing a lot, and the line wasn't ready, and they weren't ready. They were very much so prepared to deal with this the entire game. And look, I get it from the Vikings' perspective. You watch the end of that Dolphins game, you watch how protections have broken down for the Chargers, you watch how Herbert hasn't been 100% in some of these situations, and that in these gotta-have-it situations on third down or in obvious passing situations, the protection has cratered. They were so ready for this one that, yes, a lot of screens, a lot of dump offs, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of very quick things, but it was intentional and it worked, and there were guys that opened.
Yeah.
Herbert knew where to go every single time, and he's the first player, I believe, to throw for over 300 yards versus the blitz. 307 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions versus the blitz, which is wild. I mean, they blitzed him 41 times. And like we saw it, we talked about it on our show after the game. Like, yeah, they blitzed him on almost every play. They literally almost did. I didn't really think they really did that almost every play, but they did 82% of the time. Herbert was dialed in. And what makes the performance so great is that, the numbers, right? 400 something yards, 3 touchdowns, perfect game. Basically a perfect game. Set all kinds of records, completions, and this many starts, and this against the blitz or whatever. What was really impressive, too, is that there was no run game going for him. There was nothing that he really could have leaned on because the Vikings were playing great against the run. The run game wasn't going, so he had to be perfect. And the Vikings, knowing who they were, and Justin Jefferson, the fact that they could score, they were putting pressure on him to continually have to be good and have to be perfect. And again, the stat line, 40 for 47, 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards versus the blitz. He just had to be perfect from the start of the game till the very end of the game. And he basically was. Like, there's nothing more you could have asked from him. And the one mistake he made was a touchdown. I mean, he was just awesome. It was an awesome game. There are many great Herbert games, but I don't recall from the start of the game to the very end of the game a better performance. He was amazing.
Yeah, there were several times watching that tape where I like audibly laughed out loud, like literally like cackled at what he was doing. There was a play too where he rolled out to the left and he kind of jumped to his left and then sidearmed it to Joshua Kelly. And it was only like a 5-yard gain, but it was like one of the craziest plays I've ever seen. His touchdown to Donald Parham, the Chargers had that the one side angle, the first touchdown I should say, and he catches the pass or he catches the snap, doesn't move his feet at all, and just sidearm slings it to Donald Parham. Like that, it was crazy watching the tape and just how many throws, how many tight windows, how much anticipation he had to throw with. He was so dialed in, and it was so much fun to watch. It was one of the most fun experiences of watching tape that I've had in my life, just seeing how dialed in he was. There were a few times too where like the Vikings defensive backs stood up and were like audibly like, what the heck do you want me to do with this kind of instance? Like his pass to Josh Palmer for 40 yards, Caleb Evans stood up and was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, what do you want me to do in this instance? Yeah. It was great, man. The ball placement was so good. Handling pressure was so good. That's going to be a tough performance for Justin Herbert to beat. And then again, I've said that a few times about his career already. But just the circumstances, the blitzes, everything that was going on. You lose Mike Williams in this game, and Herbert just responded. He had an answer for everything the Vikings were throwing at him, and they were throwing the kitchen sink at him, dude. Like there was one miss that resulted in the Danielle Hunter strip sack, but other than that, it felt like Justin had an answer every time. Whether it was pocket management, whether it was a quick throw, whether it was like the right read, whether it was the right protection, audible. It just felt like he had an answer for everything the Vikings were doing for him, and it was such a treat to watch on tape.
Yeah, I love it. We both thought that the offense and the passing game would be better this game. Naturally, it would have had to be a bit better this game. It was a whole heck of a lot better, and everything that Herbert did, again, it was just so impressive. I'm impressed beyond belief that, and really looking at the 3 games they've had now, they've kind of had a bit of everything. The first game was very much so, here, let's set a record in rushing and be one of the most efficient rushing attacks of the last 20 years or whatever it was. And then in this game, let's just break records passing the football too. Like the fact that I know that you can't really usually have those two things in the exact same game unless you're the Dolphins playing the Broncos, but that rarely occurs. It's cool that the Chargers have that run game somewhere with Austin Eckler as well in their back pocket. But at the same time, and this is why you paid the guy, you can just lean into he's got it. This guy who got a 4.0 studying science, which is difficult. Yeah, I think he can read a couple of blitzes now. The fact that we're seeing this in week 3 is awesome. And any of the mistakes that he made the first couple of weeks or in practice or whatever, where, oops, I didn't quite identify that correctly, made that wrong call at the line, made that wrong check at the line, whatever. This is the payoff of those mistakes because he learned from them. Clearly, looked awesome. So good luck. I don't know what the game plan is to stop him unless you just have, 11 players that are phenomenal on defense. And even then, man, like this guy just battles. He's smart. Amazing quarterback performance from Justin Herbert.
Yeah, 100%. And it was an incredible film watching experience. I would encourage anybody who has the time to go on NFL Plus and watch that all 22 tape. All right, Tyler, what is your first truth of the day?
My truth, and look, I've given the unit quite a bit of grief over the last couple of weeks, and kind of understandably so, given the stats and the performances and the losses. And maybe throughout the entire game, I'm not saying this was an elite 85 Bears defensive performance. They didn't hold them to 0, right? But the defense finished the game, and that is the truth. The defense finished this game for the Chargers to the point where the last 2 drives, the Vikings got to the 1-yard line, and it required several different players, and some players that are a bit, unexpected or weren't supposed to be in the roles that they are in currently. I mean, Kenneth Murray had a tackle for loss. He's filling in for Eric Kendricks. Like, Kenneth Murray at this point in the season doesn't have to usually be the linebacker 1. That was supposed to be Eric Kendricks. Well, it's Kenneth Murray. And that play, it's in a game where the Chargers offense set records, that tackle for loss that moved the Vikings back just a bit was one of the plays of the game. And he read that beautifully. The line played phenomenal. Morgan Fox and Austin Johnson opened that up for him, and he read it perfectly. And if you don't get that, the Vikings probably score. Alohi Gilman, run stop, same drive. If he doesn't do that and knock, I think it was Madison down, again, the Vikings score. This game might be over. The second drive, the final drive, the one, they start at the 24. Like, the offense turns it over, and the defense has to stop them from the 24. And they really haven't had quite that success throughout the entire game. So they have to do it again, stop the offense again with Jefferson, with Hawkinson. And they did. And one of my favorite things was going back and watching the communication right before that final play. Nick Niemann said that he saw on film that the Vikings would run this with Hawkinson. And you turn on the All-22, he looks at JT Woods and points at Hawkinson. He points out and probably says exactly what's about to happen to JT Woods. Turns around, covers Hawkinson, knocks the ball up. Of course, JT Woods, who he just told what was going to happen, JT Woods is right there, sets the ball up. Kenneth Murray interception, game over. Whatever you want to say about the defense of the last couple of weeks or even throughout that game, they finished the game. The Chargers do not win. They are 0-3 without guys like Sebastian Joseph Day at the end of the game, Alohi Gilman, Kenneth Murray, Nick Niemann, all these guys stepping up for their little individual plays that added up to 2 stops and 2 forced turnovers, one on downs and one on the interception, that won the game for the Chargers. I don't know that the offense won the game overall, but this defense finished it. They closed things out. And the NFL is all about momentum. And you can carry this into the game against the Raiders and into the bye week. And hopefully this is a sign of you can point to this, right, in film study this week. It's not another defeating, we gave it up at the end. We couldn't get it done. We allowed this score. No, you stopped them. So can we build on this and keep the momentum going forward? So kudos to them. Kudos to them for stepping up and finishing, which is what this team has been preaching all season long.
Yeah, it felt like there was the yardage and the points. Like it's like you said, it wasn't an elite performance by any means, but what I enjoyed was that it felt different. Mm-hmm. It felt like they were more physical. It felt like they were more aggressive. It felt like they were more intentional in making these plays. It felt like they were more opportunistic. And some of that is just playing with confidence. Some of that is feeling comfortable with your game plan. It felt like the first couple of weeks that they were just kind of waiting for stuff to happen in front of them and hoping that you can make a play. Whereas this game, it really felt like they were playing free. I think Alohi Gilman is the biggest example of that. Like, there were times where he just completely drove on the football, made a play. Obviously the forced fumble against TJ Hawkinson will get some of the headlines, but there were a couple pass breakups too from Alohi, or just really tough physical tackles over the middle by Alohi, where just he was free. Like, he saw what he saw, he read it, he trusted it, and he went. And that's what we all loved about Alohi's performances at the end of last season. JT Woods had some moments in a similar fashion. Jasir Taylor had a couple big hits too. So it just felt like they were more aggressive. It felt like they trusted themselves more often. And that's what you need. There were still some Justin Jefferson moments, right? There were still some Kirk Cousins moments. Like, that's going to happen. The third down penalties, you definitely have to clean up. But if this is the defense going forward, I think the Chargers can, like you said, build on this and win with this unit. It's not going to be an elite unit by any means, but it's going to be a unit that they can trust to perform in some key moments. So it's just all about the way that they played, the attitude that they played with. And it starts with guys like Kenneth Murray. It starts like guys with Alohi Gilman, who really arose to this challenge. And, we'll talk about some of them, sure, later. But Kenneth Murray, like, I think is the embodiment of that. Like, he has taken the green dot challenge full on, and he has been able to trust his instincts and go fly around. He had Madison a couple times where, like, you just felt that presence of his, and then, obviously coming down with the interception. So that's what I enjoyed. I just would like to see them play more free, be more aggressive, and they did that on Sunday against the Vikings.
That's a perfect way to put it. And Alohi Gilman and Kenneth Murray in particular. You saw some Jaw Taylor as well, but Gilman and Murray, I don't want to say like enforcers by any means, but it just felt different. Like you said it perfectly. It felt like before maybe the defense was just waiting for things to happen. Kenneth Murray, there's a dump off in the flat, knocking that dude over. Again, tackle for loss. Alohi Gilman, what an enforcer. I could spend the next 45 minutes talking about how he should have another forced fumble, but that's a whole different thing in episode.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's a whole different thing. And I'm glad that the Chargers won, so we're not talking about that today. But those two in particular, again, throughout the game and at the end there, it was so key for them to be on, and they were. And that's awesome. Again, these guys stepping up into roles that maybe they weren't considered or they had to be to start the season. Derwin James was out, and Gilman, what he did the last two drives, play excellent. They don't win that game if Gilman, as the safety one, isn't out there performing really, really well. Kenneth Murray as the linebacker one, Nick Neiman as the second linebacker. Like, they don't win the game if those guys don't step up. And I know that Gilman and Murray are technically co-starters in this defense, but one of the things that you and I love from the preseason is that the depth guys fought hard. Like, even against the 49ers, where they got punched in the mouth pretty early on, those guys stepped up and they kept fighting. And you were just so encouraged by the fight and resilience of those depth guys, because they're going to have to play. They will have to play at some point. They've already reached some of those guys at this point. And for them to step up and play as well as they have is awesome. And again, testament to the fight that those depth guys bring, and fantastic job. So they closed it out, and that was huge. The team really needed that.
Yeah, it was an encouraging step forward for the defense. Hopefully this week against the Raiders, we see another positive step. Jimmy Garoppolo's status is in question. If he plays, we know that he's going to give them some opportunities to make some turnovers. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm hopeful that this unit can take another positive step against the Raiders, get into the bye week, and really kind of hone in on some things and figure it out for the rest of the season. My next truth here: Brandon Staley made the correct decision to go for it on fourth down. I spent most of my morning tweeting about like analytical models and probability models and percentage numbers, and people were saying that, according to Ben Baldwin, that the 9.5% win probability increase wasn't really that big, or the 6.8 win percentage increase from Seth Walder that he tweeted out, that's not that much of a difference. They should have still punted. When it comes to win probability models, the potential to increase your chances of winning on one play by 10%, that's a huge number for win probability models. It's a massive number. So I understand that there's going to be some ruffling of the feathers when it comes to trusting analytics and trusting the aggressive nature that we've seen from Brandon Staley. But this instance was the right decision. He mentioned this several times over the press conferences yesterday and today, that if they were only protecting a lead of 3. That probably is a very different decision, but they were protecting a lead of 4. The Vikings had to score a touchdown if they were going to come up short. So the math was a very strong indication for him to go for it. And I think that this is, again, similar to the defense, I think this is a trend that should be encouraging, because if Brandon Staley can continue to make these kind of decisions, eventually they're going to have a winning edge when it comes to these kind of decisions. And if they convert that play, I don't think anybody's really talking about it. I think everybody's praising Brandon Staley. I think everybody's talking about, like, oh my gosh, like, he had the gall to go for that moment. They converted. They won the game. They sealed the win. And we're having a completely different kind of conversation. You know, people kind of tend to forget the successful moments. The second Donald Parham touchdown, that was a 4th down decision that Brandon Staley went for. And if they missed that, it's a different conversation. But they made it, so everybody's super excited. It was a great throw by Justin Herbert, and on we go. So I think that this decision from Brandon Staley is a sign of things to come, and it's a positive sign of things to come, because we have been waiting for him to get back to that 2021 mode where he was so aggressive and provided the Chargers with a consistent winning edge, because he trusted the math, because he trusted his gut, and he trusts the offense first and foremost to close out teams, which is a mentality that I think was severely lacking from last season.
Yeah, I think the discourse around this for me mostly is the play call, not the decision to go for it. I could have gone either way. I get why he did, and I get why he wouldn't have if he didn't. The decision to go for it, though, I do understand. Do I 100% agree, or would I have 100% disagreed if he didn't go for it? No, there's no just extreme here. There's a lot of gray area there, which nuance is sometimes lost on social media and in sports discourse, but I get it. And look, do I want them to normalize going for it from their 24? No, I don't want that to be the norm, right? But this is a team that, I mean, one, they were staring down 0-3, so they needed to get something done, and so I get it giving it to Herbert, who, again, set records for all sorts of things. And again, that comes down to the play call. Why wasn't it a throw by Herbert or something in Herbert's hands? They also have a couple of teams after the bye, the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs, who, now I know the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals, but that team was missing 3 of their offensive linemen, and, you know, sure, any given Sunday. Those 2 teams are freight trains. Do you think that Brandon Staley's not going to be going for it against the Chiefs in Arrowhead? He's going for it. Like, this team is going for it.
He's going to go.
And the last time they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, it's because they went for it. And you could even argue last year in Arrowhead, them not going for it after Herbert lost a yard on a boot on like 3rd and 1, them not going for it on 4th down potentially led to them not getting enough points and losing that game. Again, I'm not saying normalize going for it from the 24, but I hope that this is the start of them reestablishing themselves as this team that will go for it and be aggressive, because they're going to have to be aggressive. Especially down now, Mike Williams, like, you're going to have to be going for it a couple of times.
That's a great point.
The Cowboys, I listen, good luck. That Cowboys defense is really good, but you're going to have to go for it a few times. You're going to have to go for it against the Chiefs. The Lions are going to go for it, and you're going to have to go for it too.
Yep.
Like, I am okay with them if this is a sign of things to come. Hopefully it's not a one-off. Hopefully they continue to, you know, build from this and get better from there and be more successful on 4th down, because they have it in them. And look, this could be the thing that's worked on during the bye. You know, we've got some plays that work. Hey, we got a 2-pointer to Trey Pipkins. We've got a toss play to Darius Davis. You know, we've got a throw to Donald Parham. Plenty we can do. Runs, okay, maybe that didn't work. Let's workshop this. Again, I get it that workshopping your 4th down plays when you're looking down 0-3 at your 24 is a bit testy and a bit, you know, something a bit worrisome sometimes, but go for it. I think this team needs to go for it and reestablish what they made them so successful last year, or 2021.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's the play call. You know, you watch that tape back, and it's unfortunate because we kind of focus in on the guy who makes the play, right? But the whole offensive line, that was like the one play where everybody kind of didn't do their job properly. I think the offensive line would tell you that they would want that play back, and maybe they convert that play in the future. The one thing I will say is that that's a play that Kellen Moore, has kind of workshopped, right? He's thrown some different looks out there. They did the same play in week 1, and Joshua Kelly popped off a 12-yard run. They did a variation of this play, and they pitched it to Darius Davis, and he popped off an 8-yard run. So they trust this formation, they trust this look, and I think if you execute it properly, it can be an effective play. I would have liked to see, again, I would have liked to see Justin Herbert be the one with the ball in his hands in that moment. But overall, I think sound decision making by Brandon Staley, as he mentioned, convincing math on their end. 9.5% on Ben Baldwin's end, and you had 6.8% on ESPN's analytical end. So it was convincing math. That's a huge number if you're able to convert that situation. And they could have converted, knelt down a couple times, and the game was over. Yeah. So sound decision-making process, and I think we have to highlight that the process was sound. Just got to work on the play call going forward.
Alrighty, I'll get to my next truth, and I thought you were going to take this one, so I'm glad I get to say it. Tuli Tuipulotu, welcome to Defense Rookie of the Year frontrunner standings. Now, how long will that last for? I don't know, because what is the snap count? What is the distribution of those snaps moving forward? But you probably want to play this guy a bit because he's pretty good. Tuli has the most pressures by a rookie edge rusher through 3 games since Nick Bosa and Josh Allen had 17 and 15 in 2019. And if you didn't know, those players were taken 2nd and 7th overall. So yeah, Tuli, 2nd-round pick. Tuli has been credited with 9 pressures, 3 sacks. I saw that there was some back and forth on whether he should have gotten credit for sacks or not. But 9 pressures, 3 sacks, 3 run stops against the Vikings. And he currently leads all edge rushers, rookie edge rushers, in pressures, sacks, and run stops through 3 weeks. And he's 3rd in pass rush productivity among NFL starters. And you flip on the film and you wonder, okay, like, is it cleanup? Is it as good as I recall? Is it as good as the numbers suggest? Yeah, it pretty much is. And look, I do think that Joey Bosa is still the better edge rusher. He is the pure pass rusher on the edge. That is Joey for sure. But Tuli is getting these wins against tight ends, against guards, against Brian O'Neill, and he's just been so disruptive. What he's able to do through 2.5 starts, 2.5 games really for him. Again, we have, I feel like for 2 months now, every single time you and I jump on and have an episode for this channel, we're saying, oh, Tuli did something really great. Let's continue to bump up the expectations for him. What were our stat projections for Tuli heading into this season? Like, hopefully he gets 15 pressures, 4 or 5 sacks, maybe 10 run stops. I don't think either of us meant by week 3. I think most of us thought it'd be by like week 17, you know? For him to have the stats that he has and the win rates that he has and the productivity that he's had on a per play basis and in the whole stats, raw stats basis, phenomenal. Steal of the draft at this point. Anytime you can get a defensive rookie of the year front runner on day 2 in the 2nd round, that's a steal. He's just been phenomenal and continues to reset expectations for what we have. Again, I don't recall ever watching him once and seeing him have a bad day. He continues to just do more with more to the point where I really, truly do feel that he should be out there as a co-starter. You know, I know you can't just have 3 edge rushers all the time, but at the same time, why not? Because it's working. And the combination of Tuli Tuipulotu next to Joey Bosa continues to be unstoppable. If that's all you did, if that's all Brandon Staley decided to do for the next 14 games is have them lined up next to each other and just rush over and over again, I'd get it. It's unstoppable. No one's stopping that. It's been incredible. And what I love is the passion that Joey Bosa has playing alongside Tuli Tuipulotu. It's so obvious after the plays. I mean, there was that one, I think Joey ended up getting the sack or they split the sack or whatever, but they're both on the same side. And Joey just like looks at him with this not aggression, but like love and like passion and like happiness and like anger and everything just fired up.
Happy anger.
Yeah, happy anger, whatever that is. Like they just feed off of each other, and both of them working together is again, it's been truly special. Defensive Rookie of the Year front runner for me, with maybe a couple other players, but at this point, the numbers suggest that he's been as good as any defensive rookie this year, and he's the only one in the conversation to the 2nd round pick.
Yeah, historically speaking, that award usually goes to the pass rusher drafted in the top 5. Like that's where that money is spent. Whether that's Joey, whether that's Nick, whether that's T.J. Watt, whoever the case may be. I want to reiterate this because like you said the statistic right, but like when you put the names around the statistic, it sounds a little bit different. So PFF has this metric called pass rush productivity metric. It basically takes into account how many pressures and sacks and hits are you really getting on a per play basis. Morgan Fox ranks very, very well in it, for example. If you sort it to edge rusher, you sort it to 50% of their respective team snaps. It's a lot of edge rushers that you expect. It's Nick Bosa, it's Micah Parsons, it's Myles Garrett, it's TJ Watt. Tuli Tuipulotu is third on that list. He only trails Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett, and people are talking about those two as like the best players in the league, like period. So the context of that statistic is pretty crazy, and the way that Tuli is winning in a variety of ways, he just has such a high floor, and it's been a true pleasure to watch. We talk about him on every show, I feel like, because every week we see something that we really love from Tuli. But the numbers, the film, it all points towards Tuli having such an impactful season for the Chargers, and hopefully a very long career of an impact. You mentioned the run stops too. He's 6th among all edge rushers in run stop percentage, only trailing Alex Highsmith, Will Anderson, who's the rookie drafted in the first round, who probably was the favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year, Trayvon Walker, former number 1 overall pick, Calais Campbell, who hilariously is being used as an edge rusher this year, and then Carl Granderson. So that's great company on both sides, for him as a pass rusher and as a run defender. I don't see how you keep this guy off the field, because when he's on the field, he is producing at a truly, truly special level, and we haven't really seen anybody like him in the Chargers uniform since Joey's rookie season when he won Defensive Rookie of the Year.
The thing about it, too, is that it's not just we're leaning on one player. Like, how many players, even in the first round when they're drafted, have both the pass rush and the run defense down? Not a lot. Right.
It's usually one or the other.
Yeah, it's usually one or the other. And if they have both, again, they're taken first, second, or third overall, whatever quarterback is taken, and then it's them. And I'm not saying that Tuli had that in college. It's not like I thought he had the same film as Will Anderson, for example. But the fact that he's able to win with, do you want motor? I got that. You want power? I've got that. Do you want a spin move? I've got that. You want a bull rush? I've got that. I'm going to split a double team. I can do that. Oh, and by the way, let's play the run. Stack and shed your tight end. I will push your tackle back. It's just the strength that he plays with, run, pass, you name it. Such a balanced player. You don't get that. You don't get that. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but can we have this conversation? Kind of the same way that Rashawn Slater walked into the league and it's like, yep, I can pass protect, I can run block. I can do both those things, and I'm really freaking good at it. Now, Rashawn Slater became second-team All-Pro. I don't think that's where Tuli is headed. But at the same time, again, every time we jump onto the show, we talk about him and the expectations that he's resetting. At this point, I'm looking for 20 pressures, 85 sacks next week against the Raiders, and watch him prove me wrong and do more than that. It's a pleasure to watch him work, seriously, and a pleasant surprise for this draft class.
Yeah, we on our channel did our stat predictions for every rookie. We did them for every player on the team, and I think my official the numbers that I ended up for Tuli was like 30 total pressures and 5 sacks. He's already exceeded that. He's already got 18 pressures and 6 sacks. Like, oh man, it's crazy to watch. To clarify something, Pro Football Focus does not split sacks. Because why should you? If you and your teammate get there at the same time, you each should get a sack, in my opinion. So that's where that's coming from. Officially, on Pro Football Reference, he doesn't have 3 sacks on Sunday, but PFF is better at that, I think, in my opinion.
Sure. Shout out Arjun, I guess.
All right, Tyler, you had the 4th one. Do you have another one that you want to talk about? Because I have one, but I don't want to steal anything if you have one left.
No, go for it, or whatever you got. Let's hear it.
Okay, my last truth here is that Zion Johnson and Jamari Sawyer played an incredible game against the Vikings, and I thought that the team didn't run the ball super well. I think they did leave some meat on the bone from a running back perspective and a tight end perspective. And Zion and Jamari were like, you want to talk about Justin Herbert being dialed in? Those two were dialed in. And, one thing that I talked about after the Titans game was that there were just some moments where, from a stunt perspective, from a game perspective, the team was not super cohesive. There were just some, flustering moments where they didn't pass off stunts at a high level. That was the opposite this week against the Minnesota Vikings. And you don't have that kind of passing performance without an offensive line that can handle these kind of moments. And I thought Zion and Jamari in particular were communicating at a really high level. I thought they performed at a really high level. Watching non-Jeffrey Simmons defensive players try and bull rush Jamari is hilarious. He just has the strongest hands and anchor that it just is like futile. Like you do not have a chance bull rushing against Jamari. And then Zion, he just is so explosive. He has such quick hands. He's able to win in a variety of ways. I loved watching these two play. I loved watching them pass protect this week. I thought that they handled everything that the Vikings threw at them, and they threw, again, a lot at the interior of the Chargers offensive line. And I thought that those two handled everything very, very well. So I wanted to shout those two out because I just was so impressed with the way that they bounced back after last week, which was a tough spot. Again, the Titans have arguably the best defensive line in the league. But these are the kind of things that we expect from these two, from the offensive line, that should finish in the top 5, in my opinion. And these two took a very positive step back in kind of progressing towards their potential this week.
That's wonderful to hear, and you could feel it during the game and even see it with Justin Herbert and some of the comfort that he had in delivering. Now, granted, there were still free rushers. Some of the running backs or tight ends wouldn't maybe block their guy, but his comfort level was reflective, I think, of their performance. And honestly, if you told me that the Vikings blitzed 41 times against this offense and the line and the blocking protection that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, I might have guessed that they lost. I picked them to win, but I might have guessed that they had lost because you put pressure literally on the Chargers when they've kind of been at their worst over the last couple of weeks. And that has started with someone like Zion Johnson or with Jamari Salter, where it just hasn't worked out in those situations. So to see in this game them play as well as they did, and to hear you say that they played as well as they did, Jamari, Zion, two great guys, two great interviews, two great players. And the fact that they figured it out, I don't expect zero pressures every game. If you blitz them 41 times, granted, I don't know who else is going to blitz the Chargers 41 times at this point, but that is an encouraging performance for sure. And so, again, from Kellen Moore, the game plan, Herbert, the protection, the interior, like you talked about, these two guys, really, really solid job understanding that this was probably what was going to happen this game, and they took care of business.
Yeah, again, like you mentioned, zero pressures combined between those two players. So just performing at a really, really high level. I thought the offensive line as a whole played really, really well. When you're blitzed 81% of the time, it's so much mental stress on you as a quarterback, as an offensive line. It's like, what the Chargers did from a rushing perspective on offense, like that ability to just wear down a defense. That's what blitzing can do to you so frequently, because you just get so overwhelmed by everything that they're throwing at you. And I thought that they handled things very well. The Vikings at certain moments were putting Danielle Hunter, trying to isolate him like the Chargers do with Tuli, which again makes sense because that's how you want to try and create some mismatches, take your best pass rusher, stand him up, move him around. And they handled that very well outside of the one strip sack, which was an impossible ask where the Joshua Kelly ended up having to go across the formation and block Danielle Hunter, which was, an unfortunate moment. But that was in a situation where the Vikings sent 8 people at Justin Herbert. So the two guards, I thought, have been very, very good at certain moments. I thought they put it really all together well against the Vikings on Sunday.
I agree.
All right, we'll have our full preview for the Raiders games over on our channel. We're running a bit past time today. We're trying to keep these around 45, 50 minutes for you guys. So, Tyler, who is your game ball of the week?
Yeah, I can pick from between one of two guys, I think. So I'll go with Keenan Allen, a player who, again, I know he set his own personal records. I know he made some Chargers records against the Vikings on Sunday. I think that given the trajectory of where he's been the last 12 games post-injury, which I think is a more fair sample size than just the last 3 games, including a 215-yarder, I mean, you're at a point where he is going to pass and is projected to pass Antonio Gates for receptions and yards next season, like by the middle of next season, given his current pace. Like, this is a player, and he's found the fountain of youth. This player, Keenan Allen, has been phenomenal. And I think the way he's been playing, the numbers he's putting up, you tell me he's not going to play for another 3, 4, 5 years. His game has aged beautifully, and he looks better than ever. He's about to have a career season at age 31. So he's my game ball guy officially, with 18 catches on 20 targets for 215 receiving yards. And, of course, one pass for 49 yards and a touchdown. I'm not going to donate $264 or whatever it is to Keenan Allen or any charity. But we do try to do some sort of donations related to these game balls. So I'll think of a number to use. But Keenan Allen's my game ball guy. He's just, what a game. What a game for, again, his place in Chargers history and his own personal records as well.
Yeah, it's really hard not to choose Keenan and Justin in this one, because they were like the driving force of this. So I'll choose Justin officially as my selection, but I do want to give a shout out to Kenneth Murray again. I thought he played really, really well. The tape shows a very decisive player who's physical, trusts his instincts, and again, hopefully this is a sign of things to come for him. You know, hopefully when Eric Kendricks comes back, that transition back to kind of linebacker 2 is pretty seamless for him. So Justin Herbert, and his best performance of his career, gets the game ball, but I do want to shout out Kenneth Murray as well.
Yeah, I could have easily gone Alohi Gilman with some of the plays that he made as well. So again, Great stuff. Hey, a win, man. Whole team gets the game ball. Congratulations on a win.
Yeah, 100%. It's way more fun to podcast about a win than it is a loss. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode. So that's going to do it for us today. Again, sending very positive wishes towards Mike Williams. Hope he is able to have a successful surgery, positive recovery, and wish him nothing but the best with that whole journey coming back from the ACL injury. So appreciate the Chargers for hosting us today. As always, appreciate Greg Kim for producing. Appreciate Tyler for joining me. We'll see you guys next week. As always, bolt up.